All right. Hello and welcome, everybody. We are live here on Bearski Film, and we just wanted to quickly say we are supposed to have Aldo come on. He is scheduled with us. However, we have not been able to get a hold of him yet. But man, the first game's 3 days away. Like we're still going to sit here and talk some Bears football, regardless, one way or another. Yeah, man, that's when I enter my comfort zone, Dave. It's like
Mhm.
the second the season starts, I'm just in a completely different mood for the rest of the year. I mean, it is my happy place, my happy time. And you just mentioned it before we started. Another benefit of this is the Bears have 4 preseason games this year now because we get to play this Hall of Fame game. Uh, yeah. Well, what do you think about that? Bear down
I think
play.
it's huge. I think the fact that on a roster that's young, and I think it's like one of the most advantageous things that we have going on for this season is that it's a season that's weird in between for me, and I've put a lot of thought into it lately in terms of just like the hype and everything. Um, I think me and you are kind of in the same boat on what the expectation is for the season. It's like 9 wins would be great, maybe like a playoff attempt push, maybe like a early. I don't expect Super Bowl yet. It's nice, but like prove it first. If you're a 10, 11, 12 win team, that's when you expect a Super Bowl run the following year. But I think in a year where we would like to be a year ahead rather than a year behind of expectations. I think a fourth preseason game is going to be really, really big for not just Caleb Williams because you don't really expect him to play, but like the ancillary pieces and the players that maybe aren't necessarily um, the guys you'd expect to want to see on game days like that. But those guys are really, really important. We see them pretty often and pretty early.
Yeah, and so plus every other team has 3 preseason games. Like they took that one game away, and you saw last year that a lot of teams were getting off the sloppy starts. Like uh, playing football, there's a little warm up period to it. I feel like, and I've always thought the preseason was very beneficial for many reasons. And we've talked about depth on this team a lot. I mean, these are the chances you get to sit here and evaluate your depth and make the correct choices for those, second, third string guys, and those guys can pan out to be very, very important. Yeah, I always love even the preseason games. As much as they don't matter, they still kind of do to me, just for the eye test and whatnot. And, it's not expected them to run anything crazy, all vanilla plays and things like that. But still, it's also just seeing the players out there in the pads. Like I want to see what Caleb Williams looks like in pads,
Mhm.
right? So
I think a lot of it is two parts of it. 2 points that you've been mentioning a lot is that 0-4 start. I think that's like one of your big go tos in terms of last year. Is like really what screwed this team over was that 0-4 start. It was some bad team stuff, but mostly it was bad luck. I would say the fact that you were 0-4. Two of those games are super easily winnable. A couple games were just out of your control, like Kansas City, like you were going to get your your teeth knocked in on that one. But having an early start in the season is super super vital this year for sure. And that's why I like this schedule so much. It's like so cupcake to begin with, and then hopefully, and the second part of that is we see it with a lot of NFL teams nowadays that first like quarter to half of the season, it's really just kind of getting your feet wet and hoping that not too many of your teammates get injured. So I think just having that fourth preseason game kind of knocking rust off earlier than other teams, I think that's beneficial. And I think it says a lot that they picked the Texans and the Bears, for that Hall of Fame game. These two young up and coming teams that people would probably want to see. And even though it's a Hall of Fame game and it's preseason, like you better believe it'll do numbers. A lot of people are going to watch that thing. So two exciting teams, exciting quarterbacks, exciting players. Even if they're not playing, it's going to get watched.
I mean, obviously, I think everybody's the most excited to see Caleb in the preseason. But other than Caleb, who are you excited to see go out there and play?
Man, I think for obviously I want to see like Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, but I feel like those are a little bit more known commodities. Like I know what to expect out of those guys. So for me, this season, an off season towards end of last year, I've been a big Jervon Dexter guy, and now it's a little bit in vogue. It's very trendy, and everybody's kind of seeing this weight loss stuff and him working out and everything. But I just saw it towards the end of last year, and I'm doing my full season rewatch, like I've been talking to you about in private, and we'll talk about that because it's nice to just kind of see going back a year. It's nice to see the tone of the season kind of evolve as you go, because once you take a step back, it's almost a little bit more obvious and how it was
Definitely
full.
different when you look back at it, for sure.
When you look back at it, and especially in chunks, or like you can kind of, if you can watch a game in 55 minutes like we do with our condensed. Yeah, exactly. Squeegee knows exactly where I'm going with this. Is D-line. I really want to see Dexter. I really want to see if against other pros that burst is really visible and obvious from Dexter, which it has been talked about for training camp right now. I want to see that burst. I want to see Jacob Martin. I've heard his name a lot in training camp for defensive end. I really want to see Austin Booker. So D-line mostly, I would say, is my number one. Specifically, one player, I want to see Jervon Dexter. That's who I want to see early and often, and see if like we can get an idea of where he's at.
Yeah, and like just like Squeegee says right here, we need to start quick this year. I couldn't agree more. That's one of my
super
big
vital.
things.
It's vital.
Yeah, we do. We need at least 2-1. Like that needs to be the record after 3 games, one way or another. Because you cannot repeat what you did last year. I mean, that would be, that would be the nail in the coffin in a way, because it's like if you do get a slow start, then you're looking at Matt Eberflus, potentially moving on from him, and then you're back in this trend where, okay, we just drafted a quarterback, and a year later we're firing a coach. Like we've been through that. No, we need this thing to go. We need success. The talent is all there. I mean, they've set this thing up very, very nicely. So yeah, the coaching staff needs to come through on their end too and make sure that this team winds up winning. Like that we get wins. And so I was thinking it's interesting because looking at other GMs like Ryan Pace, for example, when you're trading up and sacrificing draft capital for guys, like Anthony Miller or, even Mr. Trubisky, and then they don't wind up, or Leonard Floyd even, and they don't wind up signing a second contract here for whatever reason, that winds up being pretty painful because now you're short on draft capital. But when it comes to what Ryan Poles is doing, I mean, he's acquired so much draft capital. It's like, he's won enough to be able to have the chips to play with, right? So even just like the Darnell Wright thing, you move back one spot, you get yourself a 4th-round pick. I know that 4th-round pick, I believe, was spent on Tyler Scott, but I mean, we just spent a 4th-round pick on Keenan Allen, right? And we have that 4th-round pick available to spend. And so do you think they went out and got him with this idea that, hey, we need as many pieces as we can get to help Caleb progress and for there to be no excuses on this offense? Or do you think they got him with the idea that we're playoff ready and we need all the firepower we can get to sit there and go for a long run, even with a rookie quarterback?
I think, and I try to reference specifically Ian Cunningham and Ryan Poles and their previous experience when I think about like quarterback development. And so when you look at, I'll start with Ian Cunningham and Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts came into a situation where he had an averagely good amount of weapons, right? I think this is when Zach Ertz was still really, really playing well. I forget who their running back was right before DeAndre Swift, but they had drafted Devontae Smith. They just acquired AJ Brown, right? So like you're putting him into a position where it's hard for him to fail. I think that's kind of where that's what they're doing. It's hard for him to fail unless he's just kind of really messing it up on his own. His own mess ups, right?
And then a great point, because I never thought Jalen Hurts was the best quarterback.
Me neither.
Put on a great team, and I mean, did what he had to do.
I always liked him. I did really want the Bears to draft him back when he was leaving Oklahoma. So I was a fan of him in terms of the raw talent and everything like that. But once I saw him in the NFL, I was kind of like, yeah, I mean, he might work in the right system, and he's had up and down years, and I think he has the potential to be really good. But if he's not on the Eagles and he's like trying, situation is really, really important. And that's why sometimes these 2nd round, 3rd round picks do better than the 1st round guy, right? Because you're putting the 1st round, 1st overall guy on the worst team in the NFL by definition, versus Jalen Hurts having this potential, and even again, Ian Cunningham with Jalen Hurts being able to sit and listen and learn and have weapons like installed for him so that when he does start, it's hard for him to fail and make the excuse that there wasn't stuff around him. And then even Patrick Mahomes. I want to say when Alex Smith was leaving, he had Jamal Charles, Sammy Watkins,
They were a playoff
Travis
team.
Kelce. Yeah, they were a playoff team, right? And then Tyreek Hill was still like kind of just starting to develop and all that stuff. So you do have a playoff team. You have weapons to kind of put in. The unfortunate part, I think, for Ryan Poles is he got a quarterback with the first overall pick. I think even in Ryan Poles' wildest dreams, let's be honest, I don't think when he makes the trade with Carolina for the first overall, he's going like, you know what this first overall is going to turn into? Next year's first overall, guaranteed, no problem. I don't think anybody goes into that trade thinking that. So however he was team building and whatever cards he was dealt, I think now you're put in a situation where Keenan Allen is there, I think, for insurance more than the long term or the playoff push. I think they would like to see a playoff push, but I think with the mindset of why they're doing this, I think it's much more about the quarterback development. And that's why they were okay with giving up a fourth round pick for Keenan Allen with thinking like you see these contracts. Keenan Allen, even at his age, he's going to make $28 million. He's going to be gone.
Think about it. You drop back from 9 to 10 and acquire a fourth round pick, and you spend a fourth round pick to have Keenan Allen here for a full year.
Mm-hmm.
Just by making that little movie.
One draft pick. One
paid for
but
it,
I think,
right, in theory.
I think he's here as to give Caleb Williams the least amount of excuses to fail. I don't think, and excuse is not the right word, but I mean, just not giving him a situation where he's struggling because of lack of talent around him. And that's why, even me and you, we weren't huge fans of the Rome Odunze pick necessarily, but it makes sense in the context of what they're doing, right? You have a guy at every position to just help him out.
It's more of a pick for the future for sure. Like if you were looking for an impact now, I would have went defensive end. But
right.
But I think that's more of a pick for the future for sure with Rome Odunze then. And so I mean, it's interesting how they did that. And once again, guys, I just wanted to say we're still waiting to hear from Aldo. He was scheduled to come on with us. We're very excited to have him on, but I don't know. We have not been able to reach him and get a hold of him. So apologize for anybody who was, also excited for him to be on. Hopefully he's still, hopefully everything's okay and he still remembers to come on with us and whatnot. But yeah, we're gonna keep talking football here regardless. So,
out of curiosity for your question, let's say they just get Keenan Allen and then they go defensive tackle or defensive end in the draft. Do you feel like seeing that is much more of a move for right now or a future move, right? Because I don't even know if it's a question of like future versus playoff push this year. It's more of a question of what are you doing it for? Right now, it's so obvious. Every move that they made was to just no excuses, no lack of talent around Caleb to make him struggle.
But
give him everything he needs.
I would feel like one move can potentially make more of an impact now, right? So hold on. If we had Jared Verse on this team, I think we were talking about this. We would expect 8+ sacks. I don't know what to expect from Rome. I guess it would be like 500 yards, 3 to 5 touchdowns. Listen, if he has a lot more than that, okay, you made the right move, guys. Like this is now you can survive a lot better after you get rid of Keenan Allen or move on from Keenan Allen. You have another guy there that's fully capable. But like as far as an impact this season, because there's so much going on, I don't know. I'm not the guy that's sitting here predicting like a 4,000, 4,500 yard season. For all these guys to eat, that's what it would have to be. That's not what I think will happen, right? So I see it as being more of like a 3,500 yard season. And in that case, I'm not sure how much impact Rome has this year. But dude, you look at like situations like the Ravens with Lamar. I feel like that one play against the Kansas City Chiefs, where who was it? Zay Flowers, right?
Yeah, the fumble.
Where he stretched that ball out and fumbled in the end zone, and instead of a touchdown, now it's a touchback, and Kansas City got it. I mean, man, if that rookie just tucks it in, lands at a couple inch line, they still score. It's a completely different game. And so it just shows you, though, look what it came down to. Their rookie wide receiver So in the biggest moments, sometimes you need these guys, and you need these guys to
Right.
be good, and you know what I mean. So like, it all depends. And I mean, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I'm smarter than Ryan Poles by any means. They're going to do what they're
Yeah.
going to do, and they feel that that's the best decision. I feel like expectation wise, though, if we got Jared Verse or a different defensive end, probably we would have expected more of an impact this year.
Yeah. And I think so. Transitioning that, I wanted to answer MS question or a comment. Like if you're making a playoff push, right? And that I don't know necessarily if that's what's going to be the make or break deal part that makes Keenan Allen want to stay. I don't really feel like a second round. If we get into the first round, he goes, "No, I'm not here. Second round, I'm staying." I don't know if those two things necessarily are the main reason why he would choose to stay or not stay. I think the money's going to talk a lot, but the other part of it is also why is Keenan Allen here and what's the end game for him? I think, yeah, he would want to get a ring, obviously. And if this is his best opportunity to do so, he's going to stay here. He's going to resign. He'll play. I think you probably do need him after the season, depending on what Rome does. But this is mostly what I think this conversation kind of that's kind of what this conversation is kind of forming around is that if Caleb is the guy and you can see that he makes Tyler Scott look good, I don't know if you need to keep Keenan Allen, right? If do you need to pay Keenan Allen $28 million if he can make Tyler Scott look good? You do need Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen's not somebody you just like toss away because you just were like, yeah, we had him for a year, now we're done. No, he's one of the best 10 receivers, 15 receivers in the league. But if Caleb is the guy, he should be elevating the subpar receivers. He shouldn't need a Keenan Allen and a DJ Moore and a Rome Odunze every single year for the next 5 years. And you also can't afford to do that.
I mean, you look at the best guys in this league, and they're able to do that over and over and over and over. I mean, the Chiefs got rid of Tyreek Hill, still won the Super Bowl, right? You've seen Tom Brady make names out of nobody his whole career. I mean, you know, Peyton Manning had good wide receivers, but I always felt like whoever Peyton Manning's tight end was.
Peyton Manning made playoff pushes with Austin Collie and Pierre Garçon.
Very true.
So
there you go.
I think the other part of that too, and you know, I don't want to dismiss, like that's not the point of that comment, but me and Paulie always talk about it. The resource allocation, where is that money going? If you after this season can have DJ Moore and Rome Odunze and then Tyler Scott, maybe draft a second or third round kid, right? Like a super talented potential guy, and you can take those $28 million, add a couple more million, and get Micah Parsons because he's frustrated in Dallas. Right? Like if he just becomes a free agent, an unrestricted free agent, it's all situational and how the league's going to unfold in 1 year from now. But for me, if I could have Keenan Allen at 33 for 28 million, because that's what he'll get paid. You look at these wide receiver contracts. If he's still top 10, if he ends this season as a great season with Caleb Williams, Panthers might come.
Did you hear
CeeDee Lamb should get 30, 31 probably?
He was close to a deal. I heard it was around 138 million for 4 years.
Yeah, so 30. Wow, that'd be more than 35 almost.
Pretty much 34.
Yeah, that's insane. Like 34, 35. So that's what I'm saying. So like
that's a lot.
Micah Parsons is. I mean, I might be downplaying how much Micah Parsons is going to get paid. He might get 40 million, whatever. It's whatever Joey Bosa or Nick Bosa's contract was. $1 more, right? One penny more. And that's where you start negotiating with Micah Parsons. So that's what I'm saying. Like for me, the resources are really important of where you put them. And I hope so. I hope if you can get Micah Parsons for, you know, the money for it, or I'm just throwing that name out there out of potential future free agents, but you know, where that goes, that's important. I'm looking at Tristan Wirfs wanting to leave Tampa if he's frustrated. You get your franchise left tackle for, you know, the same amount at 25 years old versus Keenan Allen at 33 years old. Franchise left tackle, to me, no brainer for 5 years, right?
Yeah, I mean
that kind of stuff. So
you look at how we signed Tremaine Edmonds. He was 25.
Right.
Established, good. Yeah, worth it. Come on. You know what I mean?
Age really, you know, falls off a cliff too. So
yeah, and so when you sit there and you spend your money smart, everywhere else, you can sit there and afford to take shots like that. Just like I said, when you build up draft capital, you can sit there and afford to kind of take some shots with that draft capital too. And Yeah, I see what you're saying too, and like there's still room to go. They could probably do what they did last year too. Maybe at the trade deadline, sit there and find some guy that is established that would be, a come in and make an impact right away type of guy, and still be able to make a move. Um, I wanted to talk to you real quick about Hard Knocks though, because Hard Knocks is coming around August 6th, and we've seen some stuff come out uh, with the Giants. And I heard these teams are supposed to get like the final stamp of approval. So I don't know if they just messed that up or not. But there was talks that they put out there that Ryan Poles had this talk with the Giants that if Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison Jr. were gone, that the Giants would trade their pick to the Bears for what was it, a third and a fifth, I believe, or a third and they get a
fourth
back,
third and a fourth, and then we give them the first and
to move up to 6, right? And so, but their thought was they're going to take an offensive tackle.
Yeah,
and we know now they would have done that for Roma Dunze, right? So,
Yeah.
like the value of Ian Cunningham just being there, being like, dude, just pump the brakes, chill out, hold your horses, this and that, and just how the draft went. And they got the guy they wanted, period. And they didn't have to, they made some offers to try and trade up. They made that offer to Atlanta that Atlanta declined. It's the stupidest thing in the world. Atlanta just did not want a free 4th-round pick. Because we're going to take 2 quarterbacks? Like,
right.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous, but whatever. But yeah, you could tell they wanted him. And, that came out on Hard Knocks. I know Saquon Barkley also said he was kind of mad because he didn't know he was being recorded at one point. And so with all that being said, like this organization has fought off Hard Knocks for a while now, right? For a couple of years. Yeah. And like, we know what the McCaskies are. Do you think they're going to wind up showing some stuff that kind of ticks them off a little bit? Pisses off George?
I don't know. I think with how hard they've been fighting to stay off of Hard Knocks, I don't personally feel bad for the McCaskies if they end up looking foolish, because I just don't really care. I'm not going to feel bad for billionaires, looking silly because they don't know what they're doing. But I think there's going to be something that has to come out that the McCaskies have been trying to hide. I guess that's the only way I can put it, because if you're trying to hide that much for that long, I think in the back of your head that there's something there that you don't want people to see. And the word around town of how the McCaskies treat the NFL and how they treat the Bears is it's very mom and pop shop. Even last year when team president, I'm sorry, help me, I'm blanking on the name in the moment. Team president
for the last 20 years.
Our team president, our current new team president, Kevin Warren, thank you. When Kevin Warren took over, one of the really big things he did was just simply update the food and change the type of soda, right? Because you couldn't drink other than Royal Crown Cola at Soldier Field. Little silly things like that. That's just so mom and pop.
I love me some RC, dude.
RC's great. Nobody's saying RC's bad, but it's just, if I want a Coca-Cola at Soldier Field, I should be able to get one in an NFL stadium.
I always made the joke, David, that it's funny they moved on from Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace to Matt Eberflus and Ryan Poles. I go, part of the reason is because they only had to change one of the name tags by the office. They could still leave Matt and Ryan, and that saves you $12.
Yeah, you don't have to.
So I mean, we might just see how obviously cheap they are once the cameras get in there with some of the stuff, because I feel like they make some type of moves like that sometimes, like you said with the RC too. Why? What are you doing?
Yeah, it's hopefully it's not as embarrassing as we think it is, but I feel like there'll be something in terms of Hard Knocks and watching these narratives over the years. They do want to make every team look cool, right? That is kind of the point, and everybody always ends up looking much cooler, and that's why I think I'm going to say this not because we're big on Vegas and numbers and odds and stuff. The Bears over under on the season is 8.5 as it stands. I would take the over now, because after Hard Knocks is done and everybody's all hyped up and the season starts and you see some highlight films from Caleb Williams, or if the Bears have a good preseason, that number's shooting up at least a game, maybe 2 games, right? So that Hard Knocks hype always helps. and kicks in. Preseason help always kicks in. So everybody always ends up looking cool from Hard Knocks. However, there's always like a negative. They always put a spin. It's a show. It's a dramatized, serialized type of thing. They're going to try to make somebody look dumb or bad or kind of like the bad guy of the show. And I think maybe like the easy target would be the McCaskies, and maybe that's why they're kind of nervous about it.
Maybe, right? I mean, they're going to have to. But I got to tell you, like, I'm going to love it because just from a content creator point of view, like, I can't wait for there just to be more content. And I feel like these guys are, there is some characters on this team. DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, those guys are funny, man. DeMarcus Walker, he's loud. Like, so it'll be cool to just kind of see the character of these guys and who they are and whatnot. And I think that'll be a nice little look inside, what it's like.
I think so too. I think their likability is going to have a massive boost. Additionally, just this wasn't really necessarily something we planned for, but as of right now, the running back room is shaping out to be obviously DeAndre Swift. I think you're leaning towards Roshan Johnson being 2, and then Khalil Herbert being on the bubble. The only reason I say he's on the bubble is because Travis Homer is a special teams player, and he played with Shane Waldron right before 1 year ago, right? So how do you feel about Khalil Herbert potentially getting cut just out of like, I don't know. I'm going through my season things. There was a game where Kari Blasingame,
I heard this
was running back.
And I heard this brought up, and at the time it was brought up, I was like, I don't know. And then, the podcast that I was listening to or I was on or whatever, some guy made a point of why it makes sense. And it's like, I could see it. I mean, there's some issues with Khalil Herbert. One issue is at some point soon you got to pay him, right? So, like, he's got to be worth something if you plan on keeping him around long term. If not, fresh legs. I mean, a dime a dozen for that position, right? Although he's had some success, he's had some injuries. He can't hold a heavy load throughout the whole season. He won't survive it. Another thing is, it's kind of like when he's out there, they're passing. It almost makes you a little bit more one-dimensional. He's not the best run blocker. I mean, Roshan Johnson, that kid, I like him as a run blocker, running back. And you need that in an offense because you cannot just come out there and be obvious, right? So, and you also can't come out there and have your quarterback killed because your running back can't block. So, with that being said, I mean, he hasn't necessarily made the biggest case for a roster spot. I would still think he makes the team personally. However, I could see them moving on and going in a different direction, but I still think he makes the roster.
I feel like he does too, and I think this might be the year Kari Blasingame leaves because I followed Shane Waldron's offense in Seattle, and I can't tell you who their fullback was last year, if they had one at all.
Well, correct. And so they also got a third tight end. They brought Mercedes Lewis back. That's pretty much a pure blocker for the most part.
And if you're just like doing some sort of motion, you can motion Mercedes Lewis at tight end back into a fullback spot, give him a head start, and just start blocking. So I think that clearly that roster spot from Kari Blasingame can easily go back to one of these extra running backs. And as last year demonstrated, I mean, we had how many guys? We had Khalil, Roshan, Travis Homer, and then Devonta Foreman. And then at one point, we still had to go get Darrington Evans for a few games, if you remember that.
Yep,
we had to go get Darrington Evans because then Kari Blasingame was the running back, and I think he got hurt trying to do running back duties. Yeah, so we went through – there was a chunk there where 6 running backs were out, and you needed them. So
yeah. So once again, I just wanted to tell everybody we did expect Aldo to be on with us, but unfortunately we cannot get a hold of him. So sorry for anybody who was expecting to see him on with us. Maybe we will have to reschedule that with him. But I also had a quick little 3-minute video I wanted to share with everybody, and gives us a little break if we need to use the washroom or something. So I think it's a good time to play that. A quick little training camp hype video. So you guys enjoy. Not bad, right?
I love it.
That was one from like 2 weeks ago, I want to say, and yeah, just a nice little hype video there.
Yeah.
So hold on, I am just sending a link to Brandon from Chicago Sports Podcast. He may join us just so we have another guest on for the last half of the show. And, I feel like I don't know which fans out there watch or like South Park, but I feel like so many situations in my life just relate back to the show. And this feels like when Cartman wants Elton John, but he
Mhm.
shows up and they're like, here's Jimmy Buffett. He's like, Jimmy Buffett. So we promised you all, though, okay?
This might be the
But
Ferrari cake. This might be the Ferrari cake.
yeah, they show up with an Acura cake.
But Acuras are really nice.
Yeah, right. So uh I did send him the link here. I wanted to make that joke before he joins us, so he's not all pissed off. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just trash the guy that's going to come on with us now. But Brandon's a great guy. Chicago Sports Podcast. He may be joining us here in a little bit, but
Yeah. So
you know,
I think a question I guess I have that I haven't put too much thought into it, so it'd be a good conversation topic. I think little by little, you're seeing more and more players be a little more vocal about how bad Luke Getsy was potentially.
for the comment.
Yeah, thank God.
Yeah, Getsy.
I think like today, Tyler Scott was the culprit of just kind of saying how we have more freedom, there's more explanation, there's more. I don't know. There's just a little bit of everything, and I don't. Do you kind of go back on last season in hindsight and just kind of maybe this was a little bit more Getsy than we wanted to? Because I think we were so 50-50 the whole season. Who really the blame belonged to the most? And now I'm starting to lean a little bit more 60-40 Getsy. Do you have any changes in opinion on that?
Um, I think, yeah, I don't think Getsy's going to be successful. Like, if that's what you're asking me.
Yeah. Who
I'm
has a
not
better
sure.
chance of being successful, I guess, Fields or Getsy moving forward? I think Fields is the obvious answer.
I think Fields too. Yeah, I mean Fields has a little bit of an uphill battle there with just the fact that Russell Wilson's in front of him. We talked about Russell Wilson and his season last year. It wasn't a bad season. It's just that it wasn't worth the money he was getting paid. And obviously there was something there between him and Sean Payton that wasn't working. But for the Steelers, for what they're paying him, I mean, if he gives them 30 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, this is a guy that's been pretty healthy throughout a lot of his career too. I don't think Justin Fields takes that job very easily. I mean, I would think he only takes that job if there's injury there. So then he only gets his opportunity in a certain scenario. Whereas, I mean, Luke Getsy's getting the opportunity.
Yeah, which I think, and for the record, we've kind of openly said this even going into the end of last season. I think that's the best thing for both. I think for Fields, that's the best case scenario. I don't think Fields needs to be starting week one anywhere. I don't think that's helpful to him with one offseason and one training camp with a new team and a new offense and all that stuff. Like, if you want him to succeed long term, try to keep him on the roster. If he does really well, then give him a chance. But down the line, I think let him start. But this year, don't throw him out into the Wolves again. Week one, this is kind of story of his life. I don't think he needs that either.
Yeah, I think you said it the best to me last year. You know what might be best for him is a year off, like for his career.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So yeah,
he's still super young. He can have
he is
a very long career.
He is very young, and he's got a lot to learn, man. He's got a lot to learn. So we'll see. We'll see how that all turns out. But I don't have much faith in Luke Getsy. I don't think he's going to do any better with who do they have? Gardner Minshew.
Yeah, Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell.
I believe those are the two. Like, I don't think that's gonna.
Poor Devontae Adams.
Yeah, for real, man. But that just goes to show you, it's like that situation. To me, it starts to mirror the Vikings situation a little bit. It's like, what's Justin Jefferson really gonna do for you? if JJ McCarthy can't do what he needs to do. You know what I mean? It's so dependent on the quarterback. Like, what's that?
It's Sam Darnold as of right now, for God's sake.
Oh, that's true. Right. Exactly. So, it's tough, man. It's tough for a wide receiver to sit there and carry a team. And like I said, I'll tell you, Randy Moss doesn't have a ring. Like, that's rough. You have some great wide receivers in this history that don't have a ring. Whereas as far as great quarterbacks, you pretty much just Dan Marino, right? Like, other than that, great quarterbacks will get at least one. And at some point, right?
Or get you there, yeah.
Yeah, or get you there, right? So it's rough. It really is rough. And that's why I'm totally against what this wide receiver market's turning into and everything like that. And but yeah, just to answer your question though, I don't know. I don't think neither of them have a very good chance of success, but I guess it would be Justin Fields for sure.
That might be one of my favorite comments.
That's
accurate. That's good.
Yeah, that is a good comment. That is a smart.
I could see that. That's smart. I could see that happening very easily if Luke Getsy survives the season. First of all,
yeah,
I think his excuse is going to be like, well, go get Bajan.
Well, I did okay with Nathan O'Connell. What do you expect me to do?
Yeah, that's all you gave me.
Right.
I think the preseason MVP this offseason, honest to God, I think it's going to be Tyson Bagent. There's a gut feeling I have with that guy. I think he's one of those guys who maybe he's not the most physically gifted. He'll make some mistakes in practice, but when it's game time, I think he's just a football player because 5 years, Division II, like setting all these records, like the guy just does not get flustered from first quarter to fourth quarter. Psychotic work ethic. I think I'm so excited to see Tyson Bagent this preseason.
Did you hear his press conference when he was talking about his workout? They're like, "What are you proud of?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, mile-long burpees."
It's a mile-long burpee broad jump. That's insanity.
Yeah, I remember
people were trying to do it after
once to have a cigarette and watching two guys just run past me doing that shit and just be like, "Look at them."
Just got winded looking at him.
Crazy. It looked crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's nuts. And he's like, yeah, it was his birthday and his choice of workout, and that's just what they did for fun. Like, man, that kid, once he puts his mind to something, you could tell he's pretty dedicated. So, yeah, that's very interesting. I wanted to kind of just ask you something I've been thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
Vegas has his team at 8.5 wins, and we always kind of lean back on Vegas. Like last year, they had him 6.5. We got 7. They tend to be pretty accurate. They make a lot of money. They're smart. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
This year, they got him at 8.5. 8.5 wins.
Yeah.
So if the Bears come out of this with a 9-win season, do you look at that as a success?
Depending on the context of what 9 games is, right? Vegas is always my go-to in the sense of like the numbers never lie kind of thing. 8.5 feels like such a tough number to guess because I don't feel like we're going to be right at that number this season for some reason. I feel like we're going to be way below it or we're going to be way above it. And so a 9-win season and you're like 3rd in the division and you didn't even push for a playoff spot. You were like the 3rd or 4th wild card option or something like that. I feel like it'll feel bad, but I guess my short answer is yes, it's a successful season. 9 wins is probably a successful season. The only caveat I have to that is last year there was so much bad luck and such a sloppy start, and they had 7 wins.
Yeah.
Last year could have just as easily been 9 wins.
Yes. There were a couple games that really came down to one play.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there were a couple. Like, look at the Lions collapse. We were up 28 points.
Denver.
Yeah,
Cleveland
at the end.
Cleveland literally came down to one play.
Came down to Hail Mary. Yeah, I mean
Tampa,
or even you could say the pass that Robert Tonyan dropped that could have changed.
Yeah,
Cleveland. And it's not like, and then we had the number 1 pick from Carolina, so it's not like it would have hurt us to win more games by any means. Like, no, we're getting Caleb anyway. Like they were out there trying, you know what I mean? And yeah, it just came really, really, really short. But I remember when they had Greg Olson on ESPN 1000, Waddle and Sylvie did, they were talking to him and they said, "Hey, what was that like? What was that season before the Super Bowl year like? Because you guys only had 6 wins, and then the next year you came out and you were a Super Bowl. You know, you appeared in the Super Bowl." And he goes, "Yeah, we had 6 wins." He's like, "But we felt like we should have had 12." He's like, "6 of those games were right on the wire, man." He's like, we knew how good we were, and we knew that we're just this far away." And he's like, "So when we came out next year, we just got that much better, and we were able to sit there and capitalize on it. And we knew we were a good team, even ending the year with 6 wins." And so there's a certain mentality because, like kind of like you said, the eye test, the flow of it, and kind of how we get there, it does matter. It does matter. So I think 9 wins could be a successful season, but I think if you look back and you have some stupid losses and you wind up at 9 wins, you're gonna feel a little bad. So yeah, I think that's a great answer, David, because I think it does depend on how it happens.
You know what else too, and I think about this when you mention it that way. So the first year of Ryan Poles' rebuild, that's you're not going to call it an intentional tank, but it's pretty much what it was, right? When you ended up with the first round pick the first time, your own, it wasn't an intentional tank, but it was an unintentional purging of the roster, clearing of cap space. It was, fixing what was left for you. And even after that, and we talked about this local personality in Yurko, right? Saying like it was a 3-win team, but really it's about a 6-win team here, right? And then that's why I think going into this season, I remember listening to Yurko at one point and him saying, this would be an 8 to 9-win team, right? And it was a 7-win team, but the way it happened with 7 games is fluky, right? So you could argue that you kind of saw similar patterns the first 2 years, right? With these like inconsistencies and maybe some bad play calling and everything. If you even get a whiff of that this year, and it doesn't come down to these fluky miracle plays, and it's the NFL. It happens to every team all the time. But it feels like the Bears are particularly, cursed in this area. If that starts to happen again this year, even if you get to 9 wins or 10 wins, but these fluky things keep happening, I think that's a coaching problem. I don't think you can hide that anymore with like lack of discipline or whatever. Something has to change, and if you're not going to get rid of the players, it has to be the coaching. And then you just try to like give Sean McVay part ownership or something like that. You know what I mean? And just bring him in with Shane Waldron or something. You got to do something, because if they're fluky, weird mistakes happening, and you can't fix it, and you just keep kind of going the woe is me route, like, man, we're just so close. We're just so close. At that point, it's the third year Matt Eberflus, and we haven't been fans of him in particular up till now. And so at that point, I think you just got to say, you got to cut the cord and you got to move on. But like I said, like the how it wins.
That would be a crappy situation, man.
It would be awful, but it might be better than keeping him around, right? I mean,
I guess, yeah. I mean,
but if the defense is performing,
but then you take a look at his overall record. I mean, if you don't clean that thing up fast somehow, coaches come up to contract time too. Like they got to argue their case too. So I think a really good year for this team would definitely help Matt Eberflus's case out long term, and I want that. I want the consistency here. I want him to be a good coach, and I want all that to happen. But yeah, that's why like early in the show, I forget who said it, a hot start is so important. You cannot do that to yourself. I mean, I know the statistics have changed a little bit since it's become a 17-game season, but when it was a 16-game season, man, if you went 0-2, I think your playoff chances dropped down to 10%. 0-3, you're pretty much dead in the water.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think it had 0-2 team won the Super Bowl once ever, and it was the New York Giants, I want to say. And they were like a wild card team or something. So yeah, you're right. It's just you're hoping for a statistical miracle. But that's the thing. It's like the first 2 years, I don't know whether you call it bad luck or just like incompetence in terms of organizational, how you run it. The first year you could say it was like a learning year. Luke Getsy was inflexible. right? And then you had that mini bye, and then they start playing better because they start finally like paying attention. And then last year was an absolute catastrophe. The Allen Williams thing, and I'm kind of trying to gauge my season rewatch and kind of go with the flow of what's going on in the background of that team. And it's just for Flus, like giving Flus excuses is easier than it is hard, because it's like I think we've said this to each other in private, like there's excuses and there's reasons. And excuses are kind of just like, well, this happened and this happened, so I couldn't do my job. But like, it is very hard to do your job when, your defensive coordinator gets fired / resigned for whatever, rumored reasons there are. It is hard to get on track with that offensive coordinator who's still the same not good coordinator. He's incompetent, we can say, but like Luke Getzey's in the NFL, who knows how incompetent he is. But then they're starting to roll. They're having good success on offense. And then what happens? Vikings game, Fields gets hurt. You lose him for 4 games, 5 games. And then he comes back. Now you're rolling again. And by then it's already too late. Carolina's giving you that first round pick. That chemistry is not gelling. There's a lot of reasons I would say that Eberflus is better than we think he is. And there's a lot of reasons to say maybe Eberflus is really, really bad. But I think this year you have to, right? Like we said last year, going into last year, at the end of the season, you need to know if you want to keep Justin Fields or if you have to move on from Justin Fields. And a middling season is the worst thing that can happen. And another middling season from Matt Eberflus, I think, might be the worst thing that can happen to this franchise. If you're not sure if you want to keep Matt Eberflus, that's a bad thing.
That's a good point, because like you said, we did say the same thing about the quarterback. Like you want certainties in this league, But then I look at a situation like the Eagles. Look at Sirianni. Sirianni was in a Super Bowl. He was on a hot seat later. Look at Doug Peterson. Doug Peterson won a Super Bowl. A couple years later, he's fired. Like, it's so interesting how that changes. I mean, for Christ's sake, Matt Nagy was coach of the year, wasn't he?
Yeah.
So it is more of a long-term thing too, and that's what I mean. Overall, the record's not great either. Like, you got to start winning and keep winning, in my opinion, right? But yeah, definitely. It's definitely going to be interesting, because I don't know how I'd feel if we wound up at 9 wins. I want to say I'd still be like, okay, it's a step forward, but like, I think, and I know we want to reserve our expectations, but I want to get excited a little bit. First game's in a couple days, this and that. Like, it's so easy to rattle off 10 wins on the schedule too. It really is. Like, when you go through the schedule, it's almost too easy, which is why it feels like a trap. Like, it can't be that easy. It's not going to be. But man, do we have a lot of opportunities here? I know a lot of guys out there are predicting, double-digit wins. And last year, when I saw, somebody predict them going 11-6, I laughed. This year, somebody predicts that, and I'm like, oh, okay.
It's realistic.
Happen. Like, I'm not going to sit here and laugh anymore, because it's within the realm of possibilities. So, they got to stay healthy, right? Yeah. Like, that has to be part of a big part of the equation here. Like, you need to stay healthy in order for this thing to gel right and be good. But man, I am so excited to watch it. I don't know about you. We're so close.
Yeah. 10 wins in a playoff run. I'm happy with that season, and I want to keep Flus. That's I'm going to agree with that, by the way. Like, 10 wins in a playoff push, or you make the playoffs as a wild card. Oof. I would want to keep Flus. That makes me so excited that the next year with 10 draft picks, that's a Super Bowl push the fall. And this time next year, you get 10 wins in a playoffs. The following year, 364 days from now, we're talking about what are we doing to contend? Who do we have to beat in the NFL playoffs? Like,
and that's a position then that you put yourself into where you may wind up trying to sign a home run free agent or something. Now it's worth it to try and get that one more piece that'll put you over the top, that'll make you a serious contender, right?
Yeah, because that's you're assuming at that point that Caleb is what you need him to be, right? Hopefully you're not doing it because Caleb got you there with running the ball, and he was Rex Grossman, right? And he had 22 touchdowns and 15 picks. That's
David. I don't know if you could repeat it. I love the story you told me about Tom Brady and Julian Edelman.
Yeah,
that Julian Edelman told. I don't know if you could share that.
Well, we're big on that. That the quarterback needs to eventually elevate the inferior talent around him and make them better, right? And I remember just watching that on a podcast that Julian Edelman had. I think it's his podcast, and he was just saying that he went to go work out with Tom Brady, and Julian Edelman was, I believe, a 5th-round pick, if I'm not mistaken, right? 5th-round pick, 7th-round pick,
Seventh.
7th-round pick. And so Julian Edelman was just like, I want to make this team. I want to work hard. And so he went to a throwing session with Tom Brady. And when you're running full speed NFL routes, 20, 30 yards, and you're going hard, 20, 30, 40 reps at a practice are more than enough, right? 30 reps is the amount of passes you're going to, see attempted during an NFL game. Maybe 50 nowadays, right? Like that's the attempt number. But Julian Edelman was saying, like, during a practice like that, you're running 20, 30 routes. And I think he said that him and Tom Brady made him run like 75 to like 85 routes that day. And he was just puking his guts out and he was just miserable and all that. But the whole time he's like chewing him out, like, hey, when you're running a comeback, I don't want to see you chop stepping, turning over this side and then coming back towards the sideline. He's like, I want you to just flip that hip and then box out the guy and catch it, because that's the way I like to throw that damn ball. He's like, if you do it that way, the way you're taught, my throws aren't going to work with you. So I know you're used to it this way or whatever, but he was basically just saying that whole chemistry thing that we always talk about and that everybody always kind of harps on, but it's more about just like Caleb Williams at the end of the day will be here. If he's good, he's the constant. So that's when you start seeing teams, just draft players for that guy rather than being like, we need the best, tallest, sickest wide receiver available. The Kansas City Chiefs will never make an attempt to go get Justin Jefferson. They don't need to. They need a guy that fits what Patrick Mahomes likes to do. And so they'll go and get, Xavier Legette. No, that's in Carolina.
Rashi Rice they got.
They got Rashi Rice, but they got a new speedster this offseason. I forget his name. Xavier Legette is in Carolina. But yeah, no, I mean, this is what I want Caleb Williams to do that eventually.
Xavier Worthy.
So it's not Xavier Legette. Yeah, Xavier Worthy running like a 4.22. They said, hey, you know what? What are we missing? We're missing a guy to take the top off the defense, to isolate Travis Kelce on the other side, to get a guy over the middle, to run drag routes because he's pulling the safeties back. That's what we need on this team. So they just gave him what he wanted. Is it necessarily the best receiver on the board? Possibly, probably not. But they know that what he needs is that, and he can. If Xavier Worthy is doing something slightly wrong, Patrick Mahomes will chew his ass out. Patrick Mahomes is a nice guy. He's a funny family dude, and he's in commercials and stuff, but don't get it messed up. Like, Patrick Mahomes will chew your ass up because he knows what he's doing and he knows what he wants. So I do want that out of Caleb Williams. I've seen it early out of Caleb Williams, but it is nice to know that, like, he's humble and he's still learning. And I think that's part of, for Hank Aaron's comment, like, he needs to dominate the short passing game right now. Yes, he does, because he doesn't need to play hero ball right now. That'll come with time, but
Caleb Williams chewing Keenan Allen out. Listen, Keenan.
I think somebody hinted towards the fact that kind of happened in practice already, but it was more like a healthy chewing out of each other.
For sure.
But I like that. I can't wait. Every time I hear Caleb Williams talk, I feel like he at least knows what he's talking about. There's no. I watched his press conference.
Today.
It was very fascinating.
Do you remember the video with Peyton Manning sitting there on the sideline? Jeff Saturday's walking past. Oh, yeah. And we should have ran. We should have ran the ball. This and that. And he's just snapped. He's like, you know what, Jeff? Worry about snapping the ball. How about you just worry about snapping the ball? That's what you do. You just snap the ball. How about you do your job and just snap the fucking ball? Like, you know what I mean? Like, dude, that's all we need you to do. We have offensive coordinators that call play. Like, I'm at the line. I'll check to something if I want to fucking check to something. You do you, and you snap the fucking ball. Like, dude,
I would kill for Jeff Saturday, though.
You need that, though. You need that. That's leadership. And I mean, things get fucking testy, man. I know, listening to Mark Schlereth on Mike and Golick over the years, he said when he was on the Redskins once, they would get into it with the defense. He said they would first call the offense off the field. Offense would go into the locker room, get stripped down, go start taking showers, and then the defense would get called in. And he said this guy came in still talking shit And he goes, man, me and him got into a fight. He's like, I was butt naked. He was in full pads. And we're fighting in the locker room. Like, dude, these guys are aggressive, man. They're aggressive.
Yeah.
So you need to be aggressive to sit there and keep things in check. And you need to know what you're doing. You need to be confident. And like you said, I think Julian Edelman mentioned that Tom Brady might have taught him more than any wide receiver coach he's ever had. You need that from your quarterback. So these are all such important things, in my opinion, that this is the stuff that I like to hear. And like, you know, beyond just what happens on the football field, like, I don't think we were anywhere close to that with the previous quarterback. Like, we were just trying to get it together on the field, but there was very little sense of control. I feel like we have it with Caleb. We're about to play a game here finally in 3 days. I mean, everything is lining up. I am super, super excited for this season.
I hope Keenan Allen's because what my biggest concern is, and I thought about this today, and we can end on this just because it was, and we can flesh it out a little bit deeper in like a different episode or something. But I was thinking about it because somebody asked Caleb Williams in his press conference today, like, what is the thing that you feel that you are the most like behind on so far in training camp and like progressing into the NFL? And it might have not been that exact phrasing, but essentially he was saying like my blitz pickup, my line adjustment, my side adjustments, my sliding of protections and stuff like that, which is totally what it should be the answer, right? Like that's stuff that you get with experience where you see a safety come down and you're like, I've seen that before, guys, like change that up. But even with what I think our level of expectation is, how much we're hyping up this season in Caleb Williams, and just like we constantly forget that he's not a polished product. He's a really good prospect. That's why he was the first overall pick and would have been in the last 10, 15 drafts or whatever. He's a really good prospect, but let's do, like he said, short passing game right now, dump offs, handoffs. Let's get DeAndre Swift 6, 7, 8 catches a game. Like, please. I almost want to like post this on every social media account. Let's not do this to another quarterback again. Can we please give this kid like a year at least before we start shitting all over him? Like this is crazy. Like we gotta let him fail a little bit,
Yeah, and that's the comment you're alluding to, which is 100% true. And it's like, let's not pretend, everybody's acting like this is for sure. Like I am like, it's a for sure thing, right? Because it looks like it, like you're getting good reads out of camp and everything like that. And the talent is there and the situation's there. Everything's lining up to be perfect. But I mean, look, Baker Mayfield, first overall, he's been on 5 teams, right? You look at the draft that Trevor Lawrence went first overall. Sure, he got a contract. Zach Wilson went second right there. We're not even sure if he knows how to play football yet. Trey Lance is on the Cowboys, can't throw accurate passes in practice.
He might get cut.
Mac Jones kicked a couple people in the nuts, not starting anymore.
Mitch Trubisky back in Buffalo.
Dude, I mean, let's not act like it's always a for sure thing. It's not, right? Like this still has to happen. There's still quarterback progression ahead of us. The situation is there for it to happen, but yeah, you're right. Like that's why we got to think about it a little bit more long term too. Like I know this season, that's why I asked that Keenan Allen question. Like, is this year for Caleb to progress or for playoffs? Like playoffs would be great. But I think no matter what, like we need this quarterback to progress so that we can make the playoffs year after year after year after year, right? I mean, I think that at the end of the day, that's what we all want. So
it alludes to your point, man. Like Peyton Manning holds the record for interceptions, and it'll never be broken because no one has the patience to let these guys fail anymore.
100%.
Like, we need to be ultimately patient with Caleb Williams. Just let's be good fans.
Guys, like I said, we expected Aldo to be on with us tonight. Unfortunately, I don't know what happened, but he couldn't make it, and we do apologize for that. I still hope you enjoyed our conversation tonight about football, and hopefully he'll get back to us, and maybe we could do an upcoming show with him where he does join us and talk some football. But everybody, enjoy the Hall of Fame game. Enjoy finally seeing some Bears football on TV, and we will.
Our preseason stuff.
We are not going anywhere, so we'll definitely have more shows and more content, more hype videos, and all of the above. So appreciate all you. I think we're going to end it on that note. And everybody,
Thank you,
have a good
guys.
night.
Yep.
Yeah, let me just play this.